Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Eelwood and today we are looking at Jupiter Hell, a brand new indie game just released on Steam, and to answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? Also bear in mind guys, this is yet another game still in early access at the time of this review, so bear that in mind. So, Jupiter Hell is a single-player indie roguelike turn-based shooter. Set on Jupiter, as the name implies, you play as a lone soldier, your base overrun by monsters. It's your job to push back the demon ranks and destroy them at their source. You'll be taking on hordes of demonic enemies, using a selection of weapons and items to help you, and hugging cover and corners like they're your long-lost child. So, aesthetically the game looks pretty fucking good. The devs have created this game using a custom engine which they don't really provide a lot of information about. But either way, the game has very impressive visuals for an indie game. Colours used are all very realistic and most likely taken from real life references to give a convincing look to the different areas on the Jupiter base. Not so much on the later areas of course, because you do eventually delve into Hell itself. Textures and detail quality are brilliant. Things like doors, walls and floors all look very realistic with the different sheens, shines and gloss effects. This coupled with the incredible lighting definitely adds to the roguelike infiltration feel to the game that provides good visual immersion at all times. The smaller details like ceiling fan shadows, glowing interactable objects and siren lights really add to the subtle quality of the game that demonstrates good game design. The UI is pretty decent, quite a lot of information provided in a very neat and tidy arrangement on the screen. Has a very Fallout 3 feel to it in my opinion, but I feel a lot of certain information provided like the level seed, your name, class and level is pointless information that they didn't really need to display on the UI. I also find that the minimap is a bit too small and I couldn't find an option to enlarge it, which is a bit of a shame. Level layouts in Jupiter Hell are one of my favourite things about the game. Nice, well-designed stages which are not too big or too small. Just right to complement the game mechanics very well while keeping things simple and realistic. The visual effect graphics I feel could be better. Bullets fired, rocket explosions and the enemy demonic projectile effects are pretty standard. You do get a light effect from firing bullets of course, but I was expecting to see a lot more sparks, overdramatic flashes and at least some graphical effects on walls which are under fire. You do get quite impressive blood splats when the player takes damage, but that's about it, which is a shame, but who knows, something that might get improved on. Speaking of things which need improvement, character and enemy designs aren't the best either. Your character looks very robotic and his animations are very bog standard. No leaning on walls, crouching under fire, or movement variations at all from what I saw. Same applies for the enemies. The last boss however actually has a stationary animation, so again, who knows, something that might be implemented in future. On a more positive note though, the targeting, cover and grid effects are simply perfect. No improvements needed there. The line of sight light effect around the player however is way too blocky, but due to the fact the game is based on a grid, not a lot they can do about that, which is fair enough. They could maybe soften the edges a bit or make the effect similar to your character's torch effect instead. Just a suggestion.
Seems to be the last of them for now.
The OSTs in Jupiter Hell are not bad I suppose. The majority of soundtracks are pretty much no vocal heavy metal action movie background songs, which aren't even that good either. The later stages however are much better. A lot more covert, stealthy, slow paced soundtracks with sound effects that remind me of the PS1 days, bringing out the feeling of anticipation and uncertainty, especially due to the nearby enemy sound effects being much more noticeable. The metal tracks I feel are a little out of place for the style of gameplay and don't really add to the immersion of the gaming experience very well. You can tell they've taken inspiration from the newer Doom games for their music, as the game's concept is obviously very similar to Doom, but they should have taken them from the older Doom games, especially Doom 64, much more immersive. Everything else sound related is much better. General movement sounds, weapon sounds, enemies taking damage, and your character's voice acting are all very good quality. Now, I never ever say this, but you will probably enjoy the game more if you actually disable the in-game soundtracks completely and just had the sound effects on, or play other soundtracks of your choice from other games. You'd be surprised, you might find the game a lot more immersive.
Can't.
Now for the gameplay. So firstly, Jupiter Hell does have a few difficulty options to choose from before you play. You can choose between easy, medium, hard and ultra violence. Ultra violence needs to be unlocked before you can access it, but personally I wouldn't venture past medium if I were you, because Jupiter Hell is a hard fucking game. I made many attempts to complete the game on medium, but ended up completing it on easy due to the item drops, varying enemy spawns and random chest loot. Your game progression is quite reliant on good RNG. On quite a few occasions I got down 3 to 5 floors and reset back to the start because either I had no healing item spawns, no weapons above base quality, or got too low on a specific ammo that I needed. So when you first start the game you're given a very short training stage to show you how the game works. It demonstrates the game's mechanics, controls and basic game tactics. There isn't anything in the game to explain the plot when you start. It's quite literally you play as a lone soldier in a base where you kill stuff to progress further and further down into the base, then into hell itself, kill the last boss and complete the game. So once you're done with your training, you click new game, choose your difficulty, choose your class, then play. Think of Jupiter Hell as having Fire Emblem game mechanics except with a real-time feature, Doom's story and setting with Fallout 3's UI and leveling. That's quite literally Jupiter Hell in a nutshell. So the way the game works, you essentially have your standard up, down, left and right movements. You can of course shoot, reload, free aim, change weapon, use abilities and use inventory items. So if you haven't noticed already, the game is based on a very large grid of squares. This is why you can't move diagonally. Every time you move, everything else moves around you simultaneously. Things like reloading, healing and shooting are essentially classed as a move. And that's pretty much it. Combine this style of play with line of sight covering, hit and crit chances and completely randomized loot, and you've got a decent, simple yet potentially deep style of gameplay. And let us not forget the fact you chose a class before playing, which means you gain access to specific passives and abilities. With the addition of gaining XP and leveling up, each time you level you're allowed to select a perk. These perks will aid you as you delve further and further into the Jupiter base. The accessible perks get somewhat better as you level, as you'll be able to select more advanced perks as you gain points in the lesser ones. For example, with Gun Hoarder level 1 unlocked, you now have the option to choose Whiz Kid the next time you level up. As these perks aren't exactly game changing, from my Fire Emblem experience, I personally went for dodge chance and high HP as fast as possible and found that to be the best option in terms of survivability. Enemies in Jupiter Hell are overall not that smart, but can outnumber you very easily. They can sometimes abuse cover like you're going to do constantly, but this is quite rare however, as they mainly just wander to you without thought, even on the harder modes. I suppose this makes sense because when an enemy is behind wall cover, your hit chance is sometimes more than halved, which would make the game way too difficult in more than one-on-one situations. A tip for you, make sure your camera is zoomed out all the way at all times, as you'll find that enemies will engage you without you even noticing they're there because they're not actually within your screen's boundaries. But although the enemies aren't that smart, they do deal very high damage, and as I said, in tight corners or very open spaces, you can get killed very quickly. Now easy mode is hard enough depending on the items you get, but I also played hard mode quite a few times and fuck me, you will be getting outnumbered almost every single fight. It's doable of course, but if you're familiar with lunatic mode on Fire Emblem games, they require so much concentration it physically drains you, especially when you keep dying over and over. Jupiter Hell is not quite as taxing, but you really need to put your gaming head on if you want to stand a chance on the harder modes. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? The gameplay is too high risk, no reward. The immersion is way too short-lived, and the game overall lacks the small, easily forgotten touches that make a great gaming experience. I'm going to give this game a 3.5 star or 63 out of 100. The game in a nutshell just isn't that fun. Initially it was interesting, but as I said, the immersion was way too short-lived. The level of challenge provided is very high, but the fact that you get no feeling of satisfaction or reward is pretty shit. Easy mode, fair enough, it's quite simple if you take your time and don't make any stupid movement mistakes. But medium and above require way too much concentration for no reward. Why would you want to play a game that gives little to no satisfaction from leveling up, completing stages, and even completing the game? If you die, game over, start again. When you level up, here's some subtle, no real impact perks to choose from. When you complete the game, here's a small text box and back to the main menu you go. Now personally, I really enjoy the hardest modes of older games like Fire Emblem and similar games, and they're usually very fucking difficult. But luckily on those games, because of the huge damage you deal at high levels, the amazing visual stimuli you feel, and the overpowered game-changing skills you get, make the hard grind worth it as you go. Now fair enough, Fire Emblem isn't that similar to Jupiter Hell, but fuck me, you don't get anything for your hard work and concentration you put into each floor, making your healing items really last and conserving ammo as best you can. There are so many tiny tweaks and polishes they could have made to the game to really improve the experience you feel when playing. They could have your character get aesthetic upgrades to armor and weapons when you level, have overpowered perks to make you really feel powerful, adjusting the game's difficulty accordingly. They could have actually shown damage numbers, have much better character animations that adapt to your surroundings like cover, give a class upgrade system at level 10, have much more overdramatic weapon sparks and flashes for more visual immersion, have crappy follow-only teammates to recruit that shoot with you, mini objectives when entering certain areas, certain UI info should glow or flash like 100% hit chance or above average crit, and that's just to name a few. It just feels like the dev team need to sit down, look at the game and ask themselves a very simple question. How can we reward the player? Then adjust the game accordingly to answer that question. The game overall definitely isn't worth the price, your invested time, or the brain power to progress normally. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I'll be reviewing each week, and thank you all for the continued support to the channel. I can't believe over a month ago we were only on 10 subscribers. Fucking crazy. But as always, all the best guys, take care.
Need to get rid of some shit.